In this video, I'd like to introduce you to Transcriptionize, an Adobe Premiere extension that allows you to automatically turn this timeline into this nicely formatted transcript. Right off the bat, I need to say that Transcriptionize is so tightly integrated into our production workflow that it is, unfortunately, an exclusively internal tool. But I wanted to put this video together as something of a proof of concept, and to also demonstrate the kind of things you can achieve and ways you can save time with an Adobe extension. If you think you might be interested in a custom workflow enhancing tool for your post-production pipeline, I'd love to hear from you. You should find contact information below this video. So you've already seen Transcriptionize at work. I pretty much just push this button, wait a minute, and then there's a transcript waiting for me. So, if that's all you want to see, you can probably stop this video here. But if you want to learn more about how it works and ways you can start thinking algorithmically about your post workflow, keep watching for a more in-depth explanation. Transcriptionize works by integrating three sources of information. First, there are the closed captions we get from rev.com. Next, there's the organized file structure for the season, which allows Transcriptionize to differentiate between interview footage and other types of footage by looking at what directory the file is stored in. Finally, there's the detailed guest identification spreadsheet we keep to generate our lower thirds. We'll go through all of these steps next. Let's start with the closed captions from rev.com. You can see the captions in the top 2 tracks of this timeline. Now I can already hear you saying, Rev lets you export a text file, just use that. And that's certainly something you could do, but there are a few limitations. First, Rev doesn't do a good job of speaker identification. Our international distributor requires a timed transcript with the name and title of every speaker. And that's what Transcriptionize does, above and beyond the bare-bones transcript that Rev provides. Second, we will often have to make different versions of our edit, one without the funders pod, another without the next time tease at the end of the episode. By working with the captions in the timeline, we don't have to get a show recaptioned by Rev with every edit. Premiere does not allow extensions to directly read the caption data, so the first thing Transcriptionize does is it exports a fresh STL closed caption file from the timeline, and then reads and parses that file. This file is just temporary, and once Transcriptionize has finished working with it, it deletes it. By looking at the punctuation at the beginning of each caption, it is able to join captions together into timed paragraphs of text. Next, Transcriptionize goes back to the timeline and tries to figure out who's speaking at the beginning of each of those paragraphs. This is one of the areas where knowing the specifics of our particular workflow really helps. Transcriptionize looks for any audio clips in the timeline that are inside a folder on our edit drive called Interviews, and that are within 2 seconds of the beginning of each timed transcript paragraph. It now knows the name of the audio file associated with each speaker from the transcript. Finally, when Transcriptionize first loads, it asks for a TSV, or tab-separated value file, a spreadsheet essentially, of the entire guest list, including guest titles. We generate one of these anyway to create all of our lower thirds, the little identifying graphics below a speaker in a documentary. Transcriptionize knows how this lower third spreadsheet is formatted for our particular workflow, and parses the names and titles of all the guests in the current season. Then it takes each audio file name and does what's called a fuzzy search against the list of names. A fuzzy search means it's not expecting to find an exact text match, since there are all sorts of formatting differences between the file names and the actual names of the guests. Instead, it tries to find a name that's close. Once it has all that information, it writes out a nicely formatted Word document using a framework called DocX Templater. And that just about does it. A few other caveats. Transcriptionize doesn't know how to understand things like excerpts from speeches, where it's not necessarily an interview that we filmed. It leaves these as unknown in the Word document and highlights those paragraphs, so someone can go back and check who was speaking. It also has to filter out captions that are created for the hearing impaired. After Transcriptionize is done, it leaves a list of these filtered out captions on screen, so you can double check that it didn't filter anything important. Notice that so much of this is possible because our workflow is very organized. Transcriptionize knows that all interview files will be in a folder called Interviews, and that all lower thirds will have the same format. If you want to start automating your post workflow, the first step is to come up with consistent rules and practices, and be sure that your whole team is following them. This makes automation so much easier. I hope you've enjoyed this look at Transcriptionize. It's a tool that I use all the time at work, and it's saved me a ton of time in the long run. If you're interested in having something similar to use yourself, please reach out and we can talk about how we can work together. Thanks for watching.